Welcome to another edition of Tiger Talk. I'm your host, Spiro Morekas.
Whoa. I'm your host, Bryce Frederick. Welcome back to the Street Speak.
Wait, nobody told me about this.
We're flipping it today. We are here with Towson Sports Network legend Spiro Morekas about all of the things he's witnessed here at Towson Athletics. He is a key part to all the things that we do, and his life and his story revolves around the Towson Tigers. So obviously thank you for joining us and kind of flipping the script today. First, we're going to get into how you started and kind of what your vision was for what you want to be when you grew up and how your career kind of took you down this path.
Well, I originally wanted to be Brooks Robinson, but that wasn't going to happen. Then I wanted to be Jack Nicklaus, and that wasn't going to happen. So I decided since I couldn't play in a sport, I still wanted to be involved. And when I came to Towson in 1978 as a student, I originally was going to go work for the Tower Light. But I had a cousin that was working at the college radio station, which then was completely student-run. Now they've sold the station, and there isn't one anymore. But and he said they needed sportscasters. So I went, and I ended up spending my 4.5 years at Towson. I spent more time at the radio station than I did in the classroom.
There you go.
Eventually becoming the general manager, and it was a great experience.
Sure.
You learned everything you needed to know about radio at that point.
Sure. And after all these years, because you've done it for 32 years here, what keeps you coming back? What inspires you to keep coming back to this university?
I mean, first of all, it's my school's teams, and I'm deeply invested in that. And every game is a new adventure. You never know what you're going to see.
Sure.
And there have been high moments and there have been low moments, obviously, over 32 years. But I have never woken up and said, oh, I got to go do a game. It's always like, I got a game today.
Sure.
I look forward to it.
Absolutely. And in your time here also, you took some time to be the golf coach. And I know that you also have a passion for playing golf. You played in our golf outing in the fall. Kind of go into that side of your life too, and how much you appreciate that and what you kind of did here as a golf coach as well.
Well, things were a lot different in the late 80s and early 90s when I was the golf coach. I played 1 year at Towson and then decided, I'm okay, but I'm not great. And I was enjoying the radio more than I was enjoying the golf. So I took the time that I was using to practice and play on the golf team and moved that time into the radio station.
Sure.
Because that's what I wanted to do. So I was asked in the late 80s if I was interested in being the golf coach. And I did. And, most of the guys were better than I was, so there wasn't a whole lot I could do. I drove the van pretty well. We never had an accident.
Yeah.
And we changed conferences a couple of times. It was a tough time because when I originally became the golf coach, we were in the East Coast Conference, which disbanded. Then we went to the Big South.
Sure.
When I was in the Big South, Towson was the northernmost school. Mm-hmm. And you had all these southern schools that played all year round: Charleston Southern, Campbell, Liberty, Coastal Carolina. So they always held the conference tournament the Monday after Easter. And I remember one year, Easter was like March 25th or March 26th. So the tournament started the next day. We had only been practicing for about a week and a half because that winter there had been ice storms and a lot of courses hadn't opened until the middle of March. So here we are playing in the conference golf tournament. These guys have been playing all year round. We've had like 2 rounds. Yeah. So it was tough. Then they disbanded the golf team for a year, then brought it back. And then I was like, it's starting to take time away from the broadcasting, and I enjoy the broadcasting more. So that happened. One interesting story, if I can. Phil Albert, our former football coach, I remember we had a golf tournament at Penn State. Well, at the same time, it was in the fall, we had a football game. Mm-hmm. So Phil Albert filled in as golf coach that weekend at Penn State, and the players were like, his speeches were a lot better than yours.
And in all your years in broadcasting, I mean, now you've worked with Gordy Combs and Chuck Lightning and Glenn Smith, and now Patos is kind of sprinkled in there. Who have you found the most chemistry with in all those years? If you could call one more game with one more person, who do you think that would be?
I don't know that I should answer that question.
And that's fair.
I've enjoyed everybody I've worked with for different aspects.
Sure.
I
Sure.
really have.
And obviously, you've done so many games and has witnessed so many moments. So, what are some of your favorite moments that you've had where you sit, kind of witnessing Towson athletics? Just a couple games or a couple stories or events that really stick out to you.
Probably the from a importance level, the football team's win at Eastern Washington
Sure.
in 2013 has got to be up there. The basketball team's wins against Louisville and against Oregon State. That Oregon State game really turned the Pat Skerry era around. They had
Sure.
gone 1-31 the year before. They were not off to a great start the following year. Were down to Oregon State by 18 points in that ball game and came back and won. Marcus Damas hitting a jump shot at the buzzer to win it, and that kind of turned everything around.
Right.
So that, I think, Pat would tell you that may be the most important win of his early era
Sure.
as a coach at Towson.
Sure. And obviously, those are moments that we all get to see.
Mm-hmm.
But you've been around for so long and seen so many different people. What are some moments that probably you've only seen or that you've kind of witnessed behind the scenes that you would bring to light and kind of share about what makes it so cool to do what you do?
I love being around the teams.
Sure.
Especially with basketball, because you get to know those guys better than everybody else because it's a smaller group.
Right.
With football, you travel, and if you're going by bus, there's 3 buses.
Sure.
And I'm in bus 3, which is all the hangers-on like Ben Rosenbaum. So you really don't get to know the football players that much. Lacrosse a little more than football, but basketball you get to know those guys the most,
Right.
and it's fun. You feel like even though you're really not contributing anything, you are part of a team.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of fun.
And with all the basketball you've witnessed in your era, however long that spans, what would your starting 5 be of all-time Towson basketball players?
Well, since he was here the other day, we saw him. Jarrell Benjamin's got to be on the team.
Yes, I agree.
Devin Boyd has to be on the team. I would put Ralph Blaylock on the team, without a doubt. Gary Neal. Now, I never broadcast Kirk Lee, so I can't put Kirk on there.
Okay. Kirk played with my dad, so maybe I can squeeze that one in there for you.
Well, if you want to add Kirk, we'll make him the 5th. We'll make him. And the 6th guy off the bench, Scooter Alexander.
There you go. There you go. And you also
Or Terrence Jacobs.
fair. You also did a lot of sports radio talk shows as well, and you talk about your relationship sometimes with Jeremy Kahn from 105.7, and you talk about the story of the sticky note. And I know that's a way different route than what we normally talk about, what you're typically known for, but kind of go into that story and kind of bring some light to how that's so different, than the rest of what you've done.
It's a sad story, really. 9/11. Jeremy was my producer, and we were in. He was on one side of the glass, and I was on the other. And in his room, there was a television.
Yep.
I did not have a television in mine. And all of a sudden, he just puts up a sticky note on the window that says, "Plane hits World Trade Center, New York in chaos." So I take a commercial break. I'm like, "Jeremy, what are you talking about?" He goes, "Look." And, we ended up spending the next 4 or 5 hours on the air. It was terrible, but just it struck me that we were kind of primitive there, that he's got to put a sticky note up against the window. But, it was obviously a moment you'll never forget.
Right, exactly. And there's that moment and so many others on Sports Talk Radio. So in your years that you did that as well, what are some of the crazier things that you heard or things that you covered in those years that really defined the fond memories?
You had some goofball callers, I know that.
I guarantee that around here.
Which I always enjoyed. I'd like to string them along because they were goofy, and I thought it was good radio. Highlights for me, interviewing Brooks Robinson for the first time.
Sure.
Because I mentioned earlier, I wanted to be Brooks Robinson when I was a kid, and if you're my age, he was Mr. Oriole. And I was really nervous about interviewing him because you always heard he was a good guy.
Yes.
And I didn't want to be disappointed.
Yeah.
And when I got done, I was like, man, he was better than I thought it was. Couldn't be a nicer human being than Brooks Robinson. That was great. And then, again, for older people, Super Bowl week when the Ravens played against the Giants, Chris Thomas, who was kind of a legend in Baltimore media, had gone to Tampa and was working in Tampa. And he sat in with me for 2 hours one morning and that was great because Chris is probably the biggest character in the history of Baltimore sports media, besides maybe Charlie Ekman. That was one of my favorite shows of all time because we just had a blast.
Right, and with all that you've seen as well, and the people you've been around, kind of like we talked about, from your seat on the sidelines, you've witnessed sports change so much and broadcasting change so much in the last however many years. What's the biggest piece of advice you would give in this era to both young broadcasters and young athletes about kind of how to handle everything that's going on and all the things that you've seen evolve?
For young broadcasters, I would just tell them to get as diversified as possible.
Okay.
I know when I graduated, I wanted to get into sportscasting, but I couldn't find a sportscasting job. I ended up being a news reporter, and that helped me because I could see other aspects of the media. I would tell any broadcaster to be as well-rounded as you can be, whether it's doing traffic reports, whether it's doing weather reports, whatever it is.
Sure.
But the radio business has changed so much.
Yeah.
I mean, it really has. When I graduated from college, there were probably 7 stations in Baltimore that had a sports director. You didn't have all the talk shows that you have now in all sports station. So there were a lot of job openings. I ended up going to Salisbury, which is what you did back then, is you got Broadcasting Magazine and you looked in the help wanteds, and I got a job in Salisbury as a news reporter, and that helped me a lot. That really did. And I eventually moved into sportscasting in Salisbury, and then eventually up to Baltimore.
And then for the athlete side as well, kind of both handling the media and also, all the routine and things that you witnessed have changed too. What would you say to some of those guys?
Say that again?
Some of the athlete side of it in this new era with social media and just the different realm
Watch what you say.
of everything.
Watch what you say.
How would you advise athletes to kind of handle the media as well?
Personally, if I was a coach, I'd tell my guys, no tweeting. I mean, no tweeting. Just don't do it. I don't tweet much, and when I do, it's very simple. Tigers versus William and Mary tonight, 7 o'clock on TowsonTigers.com or on Flow Sports. That's
all
it.
Facts, no opinions, all facts.
All facts, no opinions,
Sure,
right.
Sure. And obviously, you live a life outside of the broadcasting and the sports world and all the rest. What would your biggest piece of advice be for just a college student right now? If you could go back and talk to yourself however many years ago and kind of give them a prep talk about what life is about to be, what would your biggest piece of life advice be?
I would have majored in something else and still done the radio.
Sure.
But I would have tried to become more well-rounded.
Okay.
You don't have to be a journalism major or a communications major to get into the media business.
Sure.
And I think maybe being a political science major or a history major would serve you better than being a communications or a journalism student.
Sure. It makes perfect sense. And our final question that we do every time, we end it on this keynote question. What did you do today to make Towson Athletics a better place than it was yesterday?
Today?
Yes.
Nothing. Nothing. I did this show. I don't know if it's going to help anybody,
I mean,
but
that definitely counts. I'm sure Coach Sierra didn't make it any easier on you with kind of canceling out, but we brought you back anyway. So, obviously being on here is a big help. Thank you guys for tuning in again. Thank you again for joining us. I know this is a crazy flip of the script here.
Go Lions.
Yeah, right? Delaney guys. We'll see you guys around. For more updates, check in at TowsonTigers.com. See you guys through the rest of the winter and into next week. Go Tigers.